Mackie.
That's exactly who's on the other end of this call. Thank you, Mackie. Broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can and join us on air. This is show number 370.
0? Well, it doesn't really sound very good, right? No, it doesn't sound good.
0, 70, and 300, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. It is 70 and 300, 100. It's matter 371 sounds great. Yeah, 170 and 300, but then 70 and 300, not the same thing. There you go.
Yeah. It's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show with Enes Shapiris in the first hour, and talking about remote viewing, and Tessa Dick in the second hour, that's Philip K. Dick's works they were talking about. If you don't know who Solaris is, you can just simply subscribe to the archives at Revolution Radio for about $5.95 Australian per month, or thereabouts. And then you'll have access to Solaris' shows, Shiny Side Out shows, and every other host shows at the station as well. So then you can listen in your own time. And I think that's what people do these days. Mickey, on the line?
On the line.
The line. Mickey and I, we both live in Australia, and it doesn't matter where you are, even if you're not in Australia, you need to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Darkinjung, and Mackie, where you live?
It's the Daruk people.
And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And let us remember that beneath our houses, the concrete, the roads, and everything that we've built, all the buildings, are lands which have had stories passed down for at least 240,000 generations. And that's something. It's a real lot. And in my impression of the world, I think they did a better job at looking after it. That's okay. Exploit, Mackie. Exploit was the word of the 60s and 70s when it came to what mineral resources what natural resources there were in any given country. Exploit was the word used. Australia, population 1 million. Exploits: coal, gas, iron ore, yellow cake. No, is it yellow cake? Yeah, uranium, aluminium, or was it boron? The other one.
Sure,
all of those.
Bauxite, actually.
Bauxite. Thank you very much. Yes. So thank you. I went I got lost. And
boronium, Balmuscus.
Balmuscus. Terrible mustache. The other, obviously, of the natural resources were large, timbers, hardwoods, and as many creatures as you were willing to kill just for a pelt, because the farming was competing against the natural fauna. This is, Mackie, that exploit word. I think it is. Well, I would hope that it's a word of the past. That we don't consider the exploits of a country anymore. Oh yeah, because isn't there someone already inhabiting it? Wouldn't there be a negotiation, a business, a corporation? You'd have to, instead of its exploits.
Not if you don't have to. I mean, negotiations and then coming up with a deal, sharing of spoils. That's Dave. Come on, dude. That's no good. Well, you know how this really works.
Yeah, I do. So I got a mirror. It's a beads, and I've got some smallpox infected blankets.
The green ones.
All the good things. You're gonna want them, right? You're gonna want them because.
But it hasn't. it hasn't changed though, Dave. I mean,
You're
yes,
right.
that's how they used to do it. It's exactly the same. There was this really great book called, I think, The Diary of an Economic Hitman, or The Memoir, or something like that. And this is essentially the story of this guy who used to work for the big banks and the monetary fund and all that wonderful stuff. And he described how he went from nation to nation in Africa and South America, Asia, wrecking those countries, right? Or helping to wreck it, and then allowing the the IMF or the World Bank come in and save the day. Now, it's not saving the day. It's just you're taking over the country. Thank you very much, and it's mine now. You can go. Bye bye. So it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. The glass beads are still there. Yeah. And why, Dave? Why pay for something when you can just take it? That's just
you raise a good question right there.
Come on. Paying?
Silly me. What?
Silly you.
Yeah. Well, you live and learn. Mackie, you live and learn. That's what it's all about. That's just really funny. Talking about living and learning, a nice segue here is Julian Assange, the sweet fellow that's been living in Ecuador, in England. Well, the little tiny, not even 200-meter square piece of Ecuador that's been there. But you know what happens, Mackie, when you upset the Ecuadorians, i.e. the leader of Ecuador? He says, come and get him.
Yes.
That's what they say.
Come and get him.
Yeah, I know what he
is. What you doing already? Get the guy.
He's eating. He's out of house of home. It's like a teenager.
He looks like a sickly Santa Claus. That's what he looks like. He's a sickly Santa Claus. I want him off my property. Take him out the back and shoot him. What? No, I didn't say that. That's what they want to do, though. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah.
All right.
Now, even though I have to say this next piece to do with him and all of the trouble that comes about as a result of the name Julian Assange. Despite the information that's been put forward and those whistleblowers who decided, like Snowden, for instance, to tell the people of the world what was actually going on in the background, there was no uprising of the American people, despite Snowden's information regarding the NSA and spying internally. Despite there being a law against it, they were still doing it anyway, and without warrants. And now that everyone knows, does anyone really think it's any different? No, not really. Does anyone really care? Not enough to even speak out loud about it. Not enough to change the world, right? So then you have to say, because Mackie, and I know the listeners know this, data is data unless you classify it. So how do you classify it? Oh, this is worthless data. It's not going to impact anybody. Here is some data here. I hold some value to that because I wouldn't like my opposition, right, to get this or anyone else. And here's some more data, which, well, it's got people's names and addresses, and that would be, in Australia, that's illegal if that was to be published, right? Okay, so those three kinds of data. I don't care about the rest. That middle set, the middle bit, the bit of data that the business thinks and holds dear to, and it might have some IP and things like that, that isn't what was shared, right? It was the unclassifiable data, the data that doesn't mean anything to anyone except for those trying to hide something, was the kind of data that was being put out. Julian Assange, they're trying to hold as tightly as possible to there being a ton of value in this data, just like Snowden. The only people that thought it was really important, because since then no one's cared about it, were the people who could be held accountable by the release of that data themselves being found guilty of something, right? So that's a whistleblower thing, right? And I saw an article this week about, there was I forget how high up this American fellow was, but he was certainly high up. He was a law-talking guy.
Definitely on the fifth floor. Definitely the fifth
At
floor.
least the fifth floor. Yeah. And he said
That's the
that
fifth floor for
he
sure.
said that the New York Post and Julian Assange, his quote is, are not dissimilar. They're the same, and no one complains about the New York Post putting stuff out and having, secret people telling them information and leaking stuff, which is apparently still a crime, but they don't care if it comes from the New York Post, and they don't have to divulge their witness, right, or their source. However, Julian Assange's information, which he was publishing on a website as a publisher, not that he did the hacking himself, you can see where this is. It starts to get a bit grey. We're so accustomed now to the word Julian Assange and the hacking and all this business, like he was doing it. Well,
Actually, it's not. Yeah, it's not grey though, Dave. It's not grey. It's very clear.
It's very clear.
No. It's because it's very clear. So let's be clear. So the hacking was done by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The hacking was done by what's this fellow? The girl now. It used to be a guy, now it's a girl. Anyway, the point is, the hacking was done, and the information, millions of documents were given to, not to Assange directly, but to WikiLeaks, right? And WikiLeaks is just a non-profit. It was just, let's call it an organization. And he was the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. So by extension, and you're 100% correct making that a comparison to the New York Post. Mm-hmm. By extension, he's merely a journalist reporting on some information. Now, it turns out the information is all true, so there's no lies here, right? He didn't commit treason. Because first of all, he's not even American, Assange, that is, right? Mm-hmm. He's Australian. Mm-hmm. So number one, he can't commit treason. Like, you can't betray a country that isn't yours. So you can betray it, but it's not treason at that point, right? Because he's not a citizen of that country. They can call it treason, but it is not treason because he didn't hack it. He only received the information. It's like arresting Woodward and Bernstein, right? Whatever the names were, for reporting on Watergate. They didn't break into Watergate. They didn't even find out the information for themselves. Someone told them what happened, and then they did some investigation. So let's be very clear what happened here. So there was a criminal act that was committed by the U.S. government on its people. The information was released via WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who is an Australian citizen, and that's all he did. He just did report on it. Okay. Now there are other things reported every day, which are much worse. In fact, afterwards the papers picked it up and they reported on it too. Mm-hmm. None of the papers were indicted for anything. But see, the problem here is, so then they tried to get it. They tried to get Assange because he's comfortable. They were afraid how much more would come to WikiLeaks, right? So they were these charges trumped up because they didn't actually try to get him in the States for treason necessarily. What he was hiding in the UK away from in Ecuador in the embassy was the charges that had been leveled against him in Scandinavia of rape. Mm-hmm. I think it was either Norway or Sweden or something or other, right? Yeah. Which turned out to be false as well. But again, I don't know if the jury's still out on that one. So there you are. There you are. He was in the Ecuadorian embassy because he didn't want to be extradited to Sweden and stand trial there, because the Swedes or the Norwegians or whoever it is would have shipped him straight to the States, where they would have locked him away forever as an enemy combatant, because they can do that now in the States. There doesn't have to be any due cause. There doesn't have to be any Miranda Act. It's all gone down out the window. It's you no longer have any rights per se, especially if you're not a citizen of that country. In fact, if you're not a citizen, if you're not an American citizen, they can lock you away forever. Mm-hmm. Okay, in an orange jumpsuit, because orange, is the new black. In case you didn't know.
Nice.
But right. But so Dave, it's a very clear-cut case. He was the editor. Yes, he released information, but he was reporting on it. He didn't create the information. He didn't obtain the information himself. It was given to him. So the case is weak. But that's actually out the window. You're right. No one knows anything about that anymore.
Well,
he's a traitor.
Well,
shoot him, traitor.
That's right. That's the call. Where they're looking for a lynching. The American Secret Services are looking for a lynching, and they'll get their man if they get their hands on him. The thing that I'm going to question here, because I don't know what process that Julian Assange is going to be found guilty through. Now, if it's a trial, like a civil trial, where he has a lawyer and there's a jury and a judge, then he might have a chance. I mean, OJ, we didn't think had a chance. Then it turned out that he did have quite a chance of getting off of those charges. However, if this is considered in that same vein as you said before, as like a treasonous act, it might very well be like a military-style court with no judge, where they simply read out the charges, and they go and stuff him in an orange suit and put him in a jail cell until he rots, till he's dead.
Because he did, man. He did.
He did.
He did.
I don't know where that came from. So I watched The Black Klansman the other day, and maybe something leaked through to me. Look, my concern for his welfare is in what I learnt in American school when I was in California at Canyon High School, and that was that you have the Miranda rights is number one. Number two is you have your day in court. Now, I expect that day in court is going to be fair, but since it would be extremely difficult to find anyone who wasn't already contaminated by the media for 8 years, that the jury may be a difficult one to settle on. So, look, I do hold my own concerns. I mean, anyone who's seen the movie, isn't it? Like made a TV movie, a telemovie, where Assange was doing the hacking, and it's like that.
Yeah, not true.
It's like the
not
meme,
true.
though. No, it's like the meme. It's like the meme where you're attached to the emotional content. Then anytime you see the very similar image, you're taken back to the time you saw like the children overboard lies that our government put out. So
But
I feel
it wasn't even hacking, Dave, though.
You're right.
I know. He didn't hack. And what was his name? I forget his name. It wasn't Snowden. I forget the name of the person that gives information to Assange. Anyway, the point is, there was no hacking. The information, here it is, and take it. It was just, the information was just taken from the governmental servers by this person in whatever format. I don't know, maybe a printout or on a USB stick, who the hell knows. But the point is, there was no hacking on no one hacked anything. The Panama Papers were different. The Panama Papers were hacked information.
That's true.
Different story.
Yeah, different story.
We like to confuse things like that, right? We like to go, oh, it's all the same. They're all treasonous hackers. In fact, anybody who has glasses should be shot. You laugh. I know you're laughing. That's exactly what happened in Cambodia when the Khmer Rouge came into power. They shot everyone who was wearing glasses. They killed them all.
Wow.
Super glasses, that means you're probably reading books or some crazy thing.
Right. Yeah,
reading books.
You're a bookworm.
Crazy reactionary forces. Elitist. What do you get your eyes for? So, no, it's a very clear case. I mean, the funny thing is, though, he's never going to get a fair trial, Dave, like you said.
That's right.
And if it's a military tribunal, which it may not be, in fact, I don't think there has to be a tribunal at all, because these days, with the Homeland Security
Bay's got a room for it.
Well, we know about that one. I reckon there are a few others we don't know about, but he'll just be locked away forever because Patriot Act 1 and 2 have eroded any rights anyone classified as a certain thing, be it enemy combatant or otherwise, have ever had. You have no more rights. They can hold you for as long as they like. There's no phone call. There's no Miranda Act. There's no day in court. There's no court-appointed defender. None of that, my friends. Gone. It's gone after 8/12.
That's right, 8/12, yes.
After 8/12, it's all down the drain, down the gurgler, because we need to be safe.
If you're a fan of the show, you know what 8/12 means. Becky,
I want to be safe, Dave. Are you safe? Do you feel safe?
Well, you know what? I'm sure the government can tell me another reason why I'm not, and then I'll ask to be saved from that reason too. Becky, the thing that I was reading today, and a few of the fans of the show sent me some links through, and that was 88 gig of files, of documents that were, you could call them insurance files, were posted on WikiLeaks. So if you're interested, have a look. Everything posted with the date of 1984 of the year is one of those insurance papers. So those insurance papers were posted. Now, they weren't posted just yesterday. They were posted a little while ago. But the call was that they were posted so that... I just remember WikiLeaks, even though it says it's a leak thing and you get this picture of them just posting everything they find immediately, they held back on a whole bunch of stuff because they realized how, well, maybe the ramifications of putting that kind of information out. Well, I think they held on to some materials, but they've listed them all now. They're all there. They're published. So if you've got a 88 gig free somewhere, go there and you can download it and have a look for yourself what it means. Hillary Clinton has gone public and said he needs to get locked up for all the things he's done. Wow, there's the pot calling the kettle black. What about your emails, Hillary? What about those emails, eh? If only she'd used Veeam, Meki. There's a product placement. If she'd used Veeam, she could have backed it up and restored that from any crisis. I love my Veeam. Look, this is quite the thing, and I think we just have to wait and see. One of the members of the Green Party in Australia said that he'd released something which was of national security interest in Australia. That something that WikiLeaks Assange had posted was to a benefit of the Australian government. Isn't that crazy? So that was today, I think this morning. Someone's finally realizing, going, wow, this guy actually did something good. This was a good thing that he did. So, there was also a quote from all the WikiLeaks stuff. It was a quote from President Trump, who said, I don't know what WikiLeaks is. I don't really follow it. What? It's a quote. But he was talking about, freeing Assange and freeing and pardoning Snowden and all this stuff for being, these the heroes in modern times. See, Australia's we have a checkered past. Our past isn't just all convicts settling here. There's a romanticism about some of the bad boys in our history. Comes to mind is the fellow that resisted police in a shootout. Ned Kelly was his name, from the Kelly gang, and he made himself this iron protection from the police bullets that was so thick and heavy. If you fell over, that would be about it, right? Be an upturned tortoise. Help me, I can't get up. But we have like maybe it's a sweet affection. It's the same kind of thing as like an outlaw in the Wild West. It's so long ago now that it's a little bit romantic about, gunslingers and high noon and, this town ain't big enough for both of us, and all that kind of talk. And brothers pulling each other's brothers out of prison, freeing them and blowing up the jail and all of this kind of thing. Today, we have these, different kind. We have a white collar kind of thing who's been bringing us messages from all around the world, telling us how bad things are and releasing information on people which should have made them guilty of something and getting them locked up. But it hasn't happened. I think we're so, fixated on our Facebooks and Instagrams and big screen televisions and eating fast food that we forgot what the government was there for. Isn't it to serve us? Is that what it's for?
It's there to tell you what to do, buddy.
See, I got it all wrong. Shut up.
Oh, yeah, Dave. Let me help you with your re-education. we opened a few camps just for you. A few of them, right?
Just relax and let the hooks do their work.
There you go. Re-education. But the problem, of course, is that it has progressed far too far far too far for us to make a meaningful change here. You look at the world today, it's different to the world that I knew when I was like young, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. I look around and I don't recognize some things. I mean, it doesn't really bother me too much, but there's certainly a different feel in the air. There's just recently, in fact, this week, I think, in Tasmania, which is a state in Australia, it's a little island at the bottom right if you're looking at a map. They've just passed a law that says you no longer have to identify the gender of your child on the birth certificate. So you can now have gender-neutral children. Because, I mean, who wants to be, oppressive and force someone into a biologically determined gender state at birth? Well, no, it happened. I'm telling you, it's a thing now.
Yeah.
But it goes further. I mean, it'll get to the point where go on.
So the grandparents are there, ready with their knitting needles and their balls of wool, and they're saying, "What are you going to have?" Oh, well, and they pause for a bit, and then the grandparents say, "Well, did you have an ultrasound? Right? Did you see the gender of your baby? Is it a boy or a girl?" Yeah, it's one of those. What, don't you know? Oh, we know.
Human.
It's human. It's human. So what did you have?
We don't know
the census records.
If the baby has decided.
The baby hasn't decided its
but
own
the
gender
thing is,
yet.
So what they could say is the oppressive God Jehovah or oppressive nature biology have made my child a boy, but lo and behold, my child is free and can be whatever it wants. Once we can make that choice, should the child be a boy or a girl or nothing, gender neutral, so be it. Is where we're going with
rather than gender reassignment surgery, there is two X's or an X and a Y. So two X's or an X and a Y, and that determines that should be, they should just draw that. So if I scan the baby's barcode, right, because that's not very far away, if I scan the baby's barcode, what bleeps up on the screen? Is it XX or X and X or XY? Don't write the word boy or girl. Just put, it's two X's. I don't know. I think the world's gone mad. I think.
Well, we know that. I don't think there's much of a.
But why is every
I
day?
think we know the world's
every
gone
single
mad.
day, Mackie. Every single day, there's more evidence of it.
Well, I put it into the words of the immortal Hitchhiker's Guide of the Galaxy author. And the name will come to me in a second. But what he said, Douglas Adams said in the book via proxy, when Arthur Dent and Trish McMillan, Trillian, go and look for this guy, the only other guy that got a nice large fishbowl from the dolphins. When they go visit him, his house is inside out. Oh, that's odd. Why is his house inside out? So they knock on the door, which is like the inside of the house, and so they're going in his house, which is the outside, so it's like a garden and all that, right? So, but it's all the furniture's on the outside. And he goes, Arthur goes, what is this? What happened to you? Well, I decided to live outside the asylum. He says, oh, right. Why? Well, 10 years ago or some such, I bought a match of boxes, like normal matchbox, with a matchbox and fire and so forth. And there was an instruction on how to use a match. And it said, take out match, open box, take out match, strike match on chemically treated surface, light, don't let burn down to the bottom, it'll burn your hand. Extinguish match when finished. When he read that, when he realized that we had progressed as a society to the point where we need instructions on a box of matches, we have all collectively gone insane. We could no longer live in the same world that required instructions on a box of matches. And I'll be honest with you, I feel the same way. When I heard about these kids in America, New York specifically, this is years ago, they were suing McDonald's because they were fat. Right, okay. So I'm suing a fast food company. I'm not saying McDonald's is good food, but it happened to McDonald's, so this is not a product placement. I'm not saying it's good food. I'm not saying you should eat, you shouldn't eat it. But you do whatever you want, right? But that's the point. You do whatever you want. You're grown up. Well, to my point from a few weeks ago, we're not grown ups. But the point is, you should know that if you eat thick shakes and Coke drinks, sugary drinks, whatever it is, right, and have fries and bread-like substances, like those McDonald's buns, which are full of sugar, food-like substances, and meat, which is also, not the A-grade meat. If you eat that every day, and you eat a lot of it, and you've seen the super sizes they have, you will get fat. It'll just happen. There's no magic. There's no. It shouldn't come with a warning label. If you eat more than 5 kilos of chocolate a day, you will be fat. No. I'm sorry.
got the McSweats.
The McGurgles. You got the McVomits. But see, Dave, this is true. We have now. So we are in the worst kind of nanny state in America and Australia, Europe to some extent. Certainly not in the rest of the world. Worst kinds of nanny states. We can't do anything anymore. Nothing. Can't have guns. You can't do anything without a license. The only thing you can do without a license, Dave. The only thing that is left to do without a license.
What is it?
Is to have a child. That's it. You can have a baby without a license.
I absolutely think that should be a thing.
Dude, honestly though, I think people should be
education
and psychologically tested. People should be psychologically tested to see if they're fit to parents. I believe that. I really do, because a lot of people are not. Be that as it may, right? So we are now living in the asylum. I think there's no doubt about it whatsoever. We are living in an insane asylum. They've thrown away the keys. The guards have moved in. Everybody else has run away, and here we are. It's a really scary proposition, and it's getting scarier by the minute. I mean, look at the news, any news, right? Mm-hmm. There's this. There's this lady here in Congress now. She's one of the only two Muslim congresswomen, and she's embroiled in a row, 9/11 row. She made an unfortunate comment, I think, everybody's jumping on it, right? And maybe even suggesting violence. I don't know. It's a scary, scary world. It's not getting any less scary. And our politicians, I mean, we have to vote next month. Vote.
Yeah, I know.
For what?
I know. For what? For what?
Pointless.
What? Yeah.
What? And here, and there's more. There's much more than that. And it's happening every day. Right, and you've got, I said this before, we've got billionaires at the same time as we have children starving and children dying because they have no clean water and nothing to eat and nowhere to live, and their diseases that should have been eradicated decades ago but haven't been for various reasons. Right, we're still children.
Absolutely.
Look at the world, man.
It's crazy. You said I said license for parenting, and the license for parenting was to avoid. Now I know we mentioned this story. I mentioned this story a long time ago. And back in 2008, there was a 9-year-old girl whose parents named her. Are you ready? In inverted commas, Tallulah does the hula from Hawaii. Unquote. It's insane.
I hate my child.
Right, so the parents were put into court guardianship in New Zealand so that her name could be changed. So the family court judge gave the order after hearing that the child was embarrassed about her name and had refused to reveal it to friends. That is a quote. She told people her name was Kay because she feared being mocked and teased. Right, so look, it's those kind of parents that would name their daughter Tallulah does the hula from Hawaii that needs, honestly, some gene pool therapy. That means they're no longer allowed to propagate, right? What? Look, Mackie, what I'm finding today is people are just... They're called meme farmers. I'm making this up. So they're just looking for memes so they can strengthen their opinion on something. And I had a great conversation with some friends yesterday, and one of my friends was talking about this enormous debt that the government, the former government, not the current one, but the former one had brought to the country. And I just said, look, the current debt ceiling has been lifted twice since. Yeah, they filled the debt then, but now it's 3 times the size as the debt's ever been. Now, with the current government, and I said that the thing you've got to really try to avoid is opinion inheritance. So where you've read an op-ed without looking at the actual data, and you've got your opinion is their opinion, not yours. You haven't formulated the opinion looking at the real data. You're just echoing someone else's opinion. And that's very... I made a point of saying that if you looked at the information that writer had written and read from to make their point, you may come up with a different opinion based on what you've read, right? And not just to echo someone else's opinion, right? So opinion inheritance, Meki, these are some of them. Last year was brought to you by confirmation bias. And this year will be brought to you, from my perspective, opinion inheritance, because I think the memes that we're seeing now merely strengthen and act as multipliers on your opinion, and they're getting worse. And the lies that are being propagated inside memes and things, just for instance inside Facebook, it's killing us. Because the truth was lost years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and even if it's a current event. It could be right now. It could be happening right now. Oh, you can't watch that. You're not allowed to watch that. We'll make it a jail sentence if you watch the current thing that's going on. If you've seen it, if you have a copy that you can give to someone else, that's even more jail sentence. And I just keep thinking, oh, it's time for a book burning. But Meki, that the only meme that I laughed at.
It's been a while since we had one of those.
70 years, let's do it again. It was so profitable. We get to print all the books again with different endings. Was a meme that I saw. A person was protesting Julian Assange's arrest, and it said, "First they came for Julian Assange."
Yeah.
Now you know what that means, Meki, right? Of course. And that tickled my funny bone there, and I, with my emotional connection to this whole thing, oh my goodness, I was off on my own personal rant. I watch the television now, and I'm yelling more at the TV than ever before, because of the terrible opinions.
Oh, no, that's an age thing. I shake my fist. I shake my fist impotently at the TV. Yeah, shakes fists, makes completely irrelevant threats.
my partner.
It's funny.
She grabbed the remote. She grabbed the remote off me, and she said, "I'm going to watch the television." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "You're not going to like it. You're just going to yell at the TV." Because it was the same election, right?
But we are at that age now, right?
Yeah, yeah. It makes for great radio. That's all I can say. So, Meki, do you have outside of that black hole that was photographed, where everyone's been posting things that look like that would look, to make it even less significant, like the end of a cigar when it's being inhaled on. It resembles the same image. There was so many of them. Even the old car cigarette lighter. Photograph that with the same filters, and hey, that looks identical as well. So
we've always had black hole names and idolatry. Now, see, if a civilization in 10,000 years' time digs up our stuff and looks at our stuff, these cigarette lighters, they don't know what they are. Clearly, it's an image of a black hole. They were worshipping the black holes. Oh, yes.
So Facebook was a place of worship. That's what it was.
Of course it was.
Meki, there's some real, in climate change, there's some real worries about what's going to happen. What kind of net results will there be if all of the ice is gone? And one of the most recent ones was climate change could melt decades worth of human poop at Denali National Park in Alaska. because all the climbers have just gone up there and pooped over the edge and it's frozen.
Oh. Yeah, that won't be much of an issue, but I'm glad we're looking at that.
First world problems,
Good.
Mickey.
Good to know. Oh, man, you just wait till all that poop thaws. The poop is coming for us. It's the Gotham. What was it? This hilarious movie where the Gotham poo monster came up.
Oh, no.
No, it's a thing, man. It's a thing. Yeah, look, it is a crazy world. We are living inside the asylum. Welcome to our world. And yes, this is the Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie. And yes, we are broadcasting from Revolution.radio on Nighthawk's awesome channel. Donate if you can. I know we've got a few more minutes left, but I just want to bring it up here. It is listener-supported radio. Dig deep if you can. Click through on the website to the sponsor sites. They're not corporates. They're actually stuff that you need, that you'd like to have. And donate it, as I said, if you can. If you want to subscribe, that's also a good idea. Subscription costs you $5.95 a month, and it gives you access to all of the archives that are Revolution.radio shows. So all the hosts, not just us, everyone. And it's listener funded, meaning you listen to something here, and hopefully you like it. We hope you like it. We're going to talk about giants in the second half of the show. And the information we bring you is unbiased. Well, I guess it's biased somewhat, because we do put our spin on it, but we don't tell you this is what it is. We only give you options, opinions, and then you can make up your own mind. Because that's what good science and good journalism should do. They should look at everything. They should look at the truth and then reveal it. You reveal the truth. There it is. As ugly as it may be, as interesting, as beautiful, it doesn't really matter. You just reveal the truth. And you stand in front of it in awe and you go, wow, that's a beautiful thing. Or it's an ugly thing. Either way, we are here to guide you through it.
Did you know
that's really what this is.
It is.
Guide.
The thing that's been the biggest, I suppose the biggest topic of the week has been 5G.
Yeah,
outside of Julian Assange, it's 5G.
Talk about it.
It's can't say that. Can't talk about
Prank
it.
call. Who's this? Hello.
Who's
that?
What?
Hello.
Yeah, I think they fell off, Mackie. I think they fell off.
I think we've got dead air.
Dead air. Yeah, that's what it is. Dead air. So anyway, research the daylights out of it. All right, Mackie, what else is going on in your world?
What else? Not much. Just look at the weather. We had yesterday. It was 30 degrees. It was 30 degrees, which is quite high. It's a summer temperature. It's a lower summer temperature, but it's still hot. And Sydney is clearly we're not experiencing any climate or weather changes at all. It's all a hoax. We should burn more coal. That'll teach the atmosphere. Burn more coal, I say. More coal fire plants. That's what we want. Crazy fools. Coal is good, man. Coal is so much.
I think that's the current mantra, Mackie. It's not the new one.
Come on.
Current.
True though, right? Current. Plus more cars, right? We should start burning coal in cars. That's what we need.
Coal-powered cars. There we go.
Now you're thinking, huh?
Yeah. No more Tesla.
I'm astounded. I'm constantly astounded by the world. Recently, as we discussed, the One Nation founder was found to have been found to have spoken about conspiracies, and then she just quoted someone. She didn't say she agreed with it, like you said last time, Dave, quite correctly. Right. She just quoted someone. Now, we completely agree with the statement around what happened in Tasmania all these many years ago, because I read the report. That was written by an ex-military. I think he was a major or something. It was maybe even a general. I don't know, but he was retired, and he wrote the report. My friend's father had access to it, and he gave it to me. I must have it somewhere still. The conclusion was maybe 2 or 3 people in the world could have done that in the way it was done. And it's always in the details, Dave.
Yeah.
You always have to go into details. That's why they like to gloss over the details, just make broad statements like evildoers and axis of evil, and everybody knows that, and the experts tell you this, that, and the other. Yeah, but it's the devil. Everybody online here is in the detail.
In the details, yeah.
You must take the time to look at the details and look at the information, not just the broad strokes, the actual information. Once you do that, your whole world is just going to open up. It's going to go, whoa, slow down over here. Okay, that's what you're going to say. Or you just don't go down that road. Is my suggestion if you don't want to slow down, right? Because it's scary. And it doesn't get any easier. And I've done this now for a long, long time. Dave's done it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
There's still things that scare the bejesus out of me that I will not talk about on air. I will simply not mention it.
Likewise.
It's not going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Life, is this life an illusion? Maybe, maybe not. But it is real enough to me. It is real enough to me. I like the things that I like, and I have the people that I have in my life, and I like to keep them there. So I take this life seriously, no matter if it's an illusion or something else comes after it or whatever. But right now, this moment is a reality. And all you have is this moment, right, everybody? Your moments take up the entirety of your life, but you only have that moment, this very moment. So cherish it and try not to overload it with too much BS, because you forget to enjoy life at that point and live it, be in the moment, right? Let's not worry too much about stuff. Know about stuff. Be informed.
So, Meki, you really did sound then like, I know it's not steak, but it's so delicious. I want to be someone famous, want to have a lot of money, and just put me back. But that was very good, very convincing.
Yeah,
I too, I want to live in this reality, whatever it is. I want to live in it. I want to be a part of it. I want to interact with it. Because if I was not to do those things, that I'd probably be a hermit. I'd have to live by myself somewhere. I wouldn't have contact with anyone else, because the first thing you do is you block your ears and just repeat the words la 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 la, and not be part of it. No, that's not me. I've got to be in it. I've got to be in it, hook, line, sinker, and copy of Angling Times. Being a part of it allows you to experience it, and living in this moment. Living in the moment, whatever moment you're currently in right now, because it could be the future, then that's the one you're in. And be there for it. Is that right, Meki? That's your message? Don't live outside the current moment?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because that's all there is. And it's only in this reality, I believe, that we have consecutive moments. Imagine a life where all your moments are simultaneous. I think that's our natural state of existence. Our natural state of existence is every moment we live, have lived, will live in this context, simultaneous. That's our natural state of existence. Not consecutive, but simultaneous. Very different view of everything, and completely almost incomprehensible to us in our current state, even almost nonsensical if you think about it, right? But imagine if that were true. Imagine if you lived every moment you've ever lived at the same time. Time, of course, at that point is no longer in existence. So you only have the everlasting moment, but it is the everlasting moment of all of your moments. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit too much for Sunday afternoon, but
yeah, right. I had a V, and I'll tell you, I can't work that out. That's all right. Maybe a little bit much.
It's good.
But that's okay, Meki. As long as you're okay with that, then it's fine.
I'm good.
Oh boy. Oh, so there's going to be a break coming up, and Nighthawk is doing a great job. The website's fantastic. The chat room's great. You should jump into it and chat to us while we're on air. And do that. Be a part of it, and communicate with us. Nighthawk has put so much infrastructure in place. And there starts the music. going to break. There we go. Look, we'll see you on the other side of the break. Take the break to donate. Surf the websites, the station's website, and click on donate as well. See you shortly. And we're back from the break, Meki.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's it.
You are you are back with Dave and Meki's Shiny Side Out, talking about giants. We spent the first hour of our show talking about current affairs, which is always interesting, but we are going to continue our show cycle of the giants. So, this is show number 370.
Correct.
70 and 300. Doesn't sound as cool as if it were a 371, because then I could say 170 and 300. That sounds cool. 70 and 300, that's not really cool. It doesn't sound amazing. And why giants? Because, like many other things, it is completely dismissed by mainstream science. Completely, without good reason. Without good reason. We don't have the fossils, we don't have this and that. Well, we say we don't, and maybe we don't. It doesn't mean it never existed. A lot of stuff we're finding out about all the time, but yet, we never knew before. There's another species of Homo sapiens, Dave, last week discovered in the Philippines.
That's right.
Okay, 4 foot tall, reminiscent of the Homo friensis. There, right? So another species of human being, just last week. So could giants have existed? The answer is yes, they could. Every legend that comes to us about the giants is fairly clear that people believed that they were in fact a reality. And these legends come to us from every part of the world. We spent some time looking at European legends, at some of the South American legends, the Far Eastern, like Hindu legends as well, some Chinese legends. There's more of that to come, and they're all pretty much in agreement. And the funny thing is this: all the giants, in fact, the word giant itself, or gigantes, means earthborn. They're not the only ones. The Greeks, that's a Greek word, of course.
Translation.
But they're not the only ones that call them out as earthborn. There are others as well. So what does that really mean, earthborn, right? We'll get to that toward the end of the show cycle. Suffice it to say, it seems that the giants were in fact real at some point in the past, and they were around just like we are today. So if you find these 4 feet tall, fully grown human beings, okay, like a separate, race of Homo sapiens, if you will, then why not a 15 or 16 foot tall human being, 20 foot tall, for that matter? Why? Why not? Look at the crocodiles, Dave. Crocodiles,
Okay.
sharks, especially. Look at them, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at prehistoric crocodiles and sharks, and even sharks and crocodiles that lived 100 million years ago, we will find they were massive. They were 20, 30, 40 times bigger than the ones that we have today. Right? They were.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would argue with that because we found the evidence, we found the fossils, we found the bones, right? There they are. But if we make the same statement about human beings, crazy. Don't know what you're talking about. Some kind of crazy nutter.
Of course, Meki, because
Right.
everything is measured on the human scale. And the
Right
human
there.
scale is, 5 to 6 foot. That's it. And when we find someone smaller, you go, hey, there was smaller people, and you point. But to them, we'd be crazy giants, right? To 4 foot tall person. However, absence of fossils doesn't mean they didn't exist. And I'll give you an example, Meki, that you stated last week, and I attached to it really quickly. What if their burial, or the death procedure, the procedure you would follow upon someone's death if you were a giant too, wasn't burial, but was incineration, like the Vikings? Then there wouldn't be a fossil record.
Nope.
If you burnt everybody who was dead, right? If you that's all you did. Good luck with that. You're not going to find any of them. So, given they lived in clusters, given that they didn't live on their own out in the forest somewhere or whatever, right? That at the moment the stories adhere to groups of people only, who are only here post-flood, etc. Then I think that's quite possible. Given they also lived for heaps, right? Heaps and heaps and heaps. Heaps much longer lived than humans.
So it seems, yes, absolutely.
Then that also makes sense. That, if they came as a colony here to do something, or they were born here because they were created by the people who brought them here, it all starts to make more and more sense. And the Sumerians was the other story that it matches, saying Earthborn.
Absolutely. Earthborn. Really, really critical to understand, because you go back to the Bible, you will find that the heroes or the giants of old, mentioned in the Bible, are the children of women from the earth, okay, and the sons of God, or the sons of heaven, whatever you want to call them, right? So it is always the earth goddess, though, right? That is the mother. So it's the earth woman, that's the mother, and it is the other, something other, that is the father. But it's always the earth-bound woman that is the mother. Always, in all the legends that I've seen so far. Now, let's look at African mythology. Very interesting. Again, Africans, just like everybody else, talk about giants all the time. This is about the Mbombo. Mbombo, also called Bumba, is the creator god in the religion and mythology of the Kuba people of Central Africa in the area that is now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In the Mbombo creation myth, Mbombo was a giant in form, so he was a giant statue, and he was white in color. The myth describes the creation of the universe from nothing. This is the story. The story of Mbombo's creation tells that in the beginning, Mbombo was alone, darkness and primordial water covered all the earth. That sounds familiar. It would happen that Mbombo came to feel an intense pain in his stomach, and then Mbombo vomited the sun, the moon, and the stars. The heat and light from the sun evaporated the water covering the earth, creating clouds, and after time, the dry hills emerged from the water. Then Mbombo vomited once more, bringing forth the animals, and on and on and on. And Mbombo also vomited many men. One of them was called Lokoyima and was white, like Bumba himself. The 9 animals that he vomited out went on to create all of the world's creatures. 3 of Mbombo's sons then said they would finish creating the world. The first to try, Nyonye Ngana, vomited white ants but died after. To honor him, the ants went deep in the earth for dark soil to bury him and transformed the barren sands at the earth's surface. The second, Chonganda, created the first plant, which in turn gave rise to all trees, grasses, and flowers. And Chedi Bomba, the third son, made the last bird, the kite. Tsetse Bumba caused trouble on the earth, so Mbombo chased her into the sky, where she became the Thunderbolt. She was the white heron, by the way. This left people without fire. Now, this is interesting. So Mbombo showed them how to make it from trees. Once the creation was complete and peaceful, Mbombo delivered it to mankind and retreated into the heavens, leaving Lokoyima to serve as god upon the earth. The woman of the waters in Chienge lived in the east near Sun. Water became the first king of the Kuba. Occasionally, cruel and kind giants appear in the same myth. The Mensa people of Ethiopia tell a story about a man who tries to steal cattle from one of the Rom, a tribe of giants. Enraged, the giant tries to kill the man. As the man flees, another giant befriends him and hides him in his cloak. Unfortunately, the man is crushed when the two giants come to blows. There are a couple of things here which are very interesting, right? People didn't have fire. Mbombo gave it to them. He was white. He was white. He was large. And in all of the creation myths, it's again, there was water initially. I think when we talk about these creation myths, some of them probably go back further in time, but I think most of them actually hark back to the time of the Great Flood. I really honestly do believe that. And what happened after the flood. Okay. There's also confusion of stories and a mix-up of stories, but it is fascinating. Again, there they are, the giants. Okay. In this case, the creator giants, which makes sense, because if the Igigi were the giants, or the Anunnaki for that matter, then they were on the earth and they came and created the civilization that came after the Adamu. They also created the civilization of the Adamu. So both our forebears, our immediate forebears, the Adamu, and then ourselves after the last great deluge. Because we're not very new. We're not very old. We're fairly new. But Dave, tell us about the Pangu.
Yeah, just one sec. The Mensa,
Sure.
the Mensa people of Ethiopia, Mensa.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's really interesting because Mensa has several meanings. One of those is mind, table, and month are all the current meanings of the word Mensa, with their origins going way back. Now, at the moment, we understand also that Mensa is a group of intelligent people who have formed their own group of people exceeding a certain IQ. And wow. So is it like the smart people of Ethiopia? The people who remember, the mind people of Ethiopia? The people who remember, possibly. It's very interesting that it's written in such a way, in that way in particular. Now, the Pangu. This is a portrait of Pangu. The first writer to record the myth of Pangu was Zhu Zhen. During the Three Kingdoms period, recently his name was found in a tomb dated 194 AD. In the beginning, there was nothing in the universe except a formless chaos. This chaos coalesced into a cosmic egg for about 18,000 years. Within it, the perfectly opposed principles of yin and yang became balanced, and Pangu emerged, or woke up, from the egg. Pangu is usually depicted as a primitive, hairy giant who has horns on his head and wears fur. Pangu began creating the world. He separated yin from yang with a swing of his giant axe, creating the earth, that's murky yin, and the sky, clear yang. To keep them separated, Pangu stood between them and pushed up the sky. With each day, the sky grew 10 feet or 3 meters higher, the earth 10 feet thicker, and Pangu 10 feet taller. This task took yet another 18,000 years. In some versions of the story, Pangu is aided in this task by the four most prominent beasts, namely the turtle, the oilin, the phoenix, and the dragon. After the 18,000 years had elapsed, Pangu died. His breath became the wind, mist and clouds, his voice thunder, his left eye the sun, his right the moon, his head the mountains and extremes of the world, his blood rivers, his muscles fertile land, his hair, his facial hair, the stars and Milky Way, his fur brushes and forests, his bones valuable minerals, his bone marrow sacred diamonds, his sweat rain, and the fleas on his fur carried by the wind became animals.
Mhm.
That's very poetic. I like that. The origin, though. 3 main views describe the origin of Pangu myth. The first is the story is indigenous and was developed or transmitted through time to Zhu Zhen, a senior scholar, or Wei Zhuzan, states that the Pangu story is derived from the stories during the Western Zhou dynasty. He cites the story of Zhong and Li in the Qiyu section of the ancient classics Goyu. In it, King Zhao of Chu asked, and I'm butchering this language, to be honest, Guan Shefu, a question. What did the ancient classic Zhao Shu mean by the sentence that Zhong and Li caused the heaven and earth to disconnect from each other? That's the question. The Zhao Shu sentence he refers to is about an earlier person, Lu Xing, who converses with King Mu of Zhao. King Mu's reign is much earlier and dates to about 1001 to 946 BC. In their conversation, they discuss a disconnection between the heaven and the earth. Mackie?
Dirk Bode linked the myth to the ancestral mythologies of the Miao people and Yao people in southern China. This is Professor Quinn's reconstruction of the true creation myth preceding the myth of Pangu. Note that this is not actually a creation myth, and I'm quoting here now. Their brother and his sister became the only survivors of the prehistoric deluge by couching in a gourd that floated on water. The two got married afterwards, and a mass of flesh in the shape of a whetstone was born. They chopped it, and the pieces turned into large crowds of people, who began to reproduce again. The couple were named Pan and Gao in the Zhuang ethnic language, which stands for whetstone and gourd, respectively. You can't really get away from the deluge. You can't. You can't get away from the flood. Paul Karras writes this. Panku. The basic idea of the Yi philosophy was so convincing that it almost obliterated the Taoist cosmology of Panku, who is said to have chiseled the world out of rocks of eternity. Though the legend is not held in high honor by the literati, it contains some features of interest which have not as yet been pointed out and deserve at least an incidental comment. Panku is written in 2 ways. One means in literal translation, base and ancient. The other, base and solid. Both are homophones, that means they are pronounced the same way, and the former may be preferred as the original and correct spelling. Obviously, the name means aboriginal abyss, or, in the terse German, Urgrund, Urgrund, and we have reason to believe it to be a translation of the Babylonian Tiamat, the deep. So Urgrund is the original, the basis, or the original basin, the original ground even. The Chinese legend tells us that Panku's bones changed to rocks, his flesh to earth, his marrow, teeth, and nails to metals, his hair to herbs and trees, his veins to rivers, his breath to wind, and his 4 limbs became pillars marking the 4 corners of the world, which is the Chinese version not only of the Norse myth of the giant Ymir, but also of the Babylonian story of Tiamat. Illustrations of Panku were represented in the company of supernatural animals that symbolize old age or mortality. The tortoise and the crane. Sometimes also the dragon, the emblem of power, and the phoenix, the emblem of bliss. When the earth had thus been shaped from the body of Panku, we are told that 3 great rivers successively governed the world. First the celestial, then the terrestrial, and finally the human sovereign. They were followed by Yung Cheng and Sui Yen, which means firemen. The later being the Chinese Prometheus, who brought the fire down from heaven and taught men in its various uses.
Prometheus.
The Prometheus myth is not indigenous to Greece. I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it received the artistically classical form under which it is best known to us. The name, which by an ingenious afterthought is explained as the forethinker, is originally the Sanskrit pramantha and means twirler or fire stick, being the rod of hardwood which produced fire by rapid rotation in a piece of soft wood. We cannot deny that the myth must have been known also in Mesopotamia, the main center of civilization between India and Greece, and it became probable that the figure Suigen has been derived from the same prototype as the Greek Prometheus. So let's take a step back before I finish off and hand it to you, Dave. We're talking about a massive cross-cultural similarity between the Greeks, the ancient Sanskrit speakers, which is really, the civilization of India, the Chinese, the Greeks, it's the Babylonians, for that matter. This is big, right? Prometheus is only seen, I guess, as a prototype. Yeah, as a prototype. The person or the act of stealing fire from the gods, knowledge even. Right? Now, the missionary and translator James Legge discusses Pangu. Pangu is spoken of by the common people as the first man who opened up heaven and earth. It has been said to me in pidgin English that he is all the same near Adam. And in Taoist picture books, I've seen him as a shaggy, dwarfish Hercules, developing from a bear rather than an ape, and wielding an immense hammer and chisel with which he's breaking the chaotic rocks. Dave.
Oh my goodness! I'm still stuck on Prometheus. So the Prometheus, right? the quote here that his flesh turned to earth, his marrow, teeth, and nails to metals, etc. Blah 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 blah. It's pictured really well in that prequel alien movie called Prometheus.
I know, right?
Where the aliens come down here, he stands into water and drinks the thing, and he just dissolves into the water, and it becomes life on the planet.
That's it, exactly.
It's exactly it. And despite there also being references to the Sumerian text of Tiamat, Mackie, Tiamat is mentioned there. Oh my goodness!
This is a. I know, I hear you, man.
it's all connected. It is all connected. Everything's connected. It's as simple as that. The Pangu myth appears to have been preceded in ancient Chinese literature by the existence of Shangdi or Tai, or of the Tavi Sheng Gushi. Other Chinese myths, such as the Nua and the Jade Emperor, try to explain how people were created and do not necessarily explain the creation of the world. There are many variations of these myths. In Baye culture, according to Baye mythology, the Pangu became an expert in rice farming after creating the world. He married the daughter of the Dragon King, and their union gave rise to the Bayu people, so the Buai people. The daughter of the Dragon King and Pangu had a son named Xinheng. When Xinheng disrespected his mother, she returned to heaven and never came down, despite the repeated pleas of her husband and son. That's it, I'm out here, she says. Pangu was forced to remarry and eventually died on the 6th day of the 6th month of the lunar calendar. There's some sixes right there. Xinheng's stepmother treated him badly and almost killed him. There's a child abuse case there, early one. When Xinheng threatened to destroy her rice harvest, she realized her mistake. She made peace with him, and they went on to pay their respects to Pangu annually on the 6th day of the 6th month of the lunar calendar. This day became an important traditional Baye holiday for ancestral worship. This legend of creation is one of the main characteristics that distinguishes the Baye from the Zhuan.
we can't get away from creation myths. We can't get away from the floods. And it's really interesting that the more we look at this, it is very clear that the Bible is a very late comer in telling these stories. I don't mean any disrespect, right?
No.
But it is really the case, especially if you look at the primary sources that are all predating even the Old Testament, certainly the Babylonian writings and similar. You know that the story, like we've said many times before, is a lot richer. So I urge everybody to go back to the cuneiform texts, read them, right? Now, the problem, of course, that we have, Dave, is that this is simply by the believers called the work of the devil. The devil is trying to confuse us. That's right. Always been, that's always been the case, though. Dave, the problem, just because you've got new information, you bring new stuff forward and it makes people think you're threatening the status quo and the establishment. Of course they will. Not like that and call you all kinds of names and burn you at the stake if they get a chance. That we haven't had a good book burning in a while, right?
but Mackie, so the Bible talks about giants and it talks about a flood and it has a reasonable description of creation.
Yes.
Yeah. It talks about all of those
things. Yes, it does.
It does. Absolutely does.
Yes, but 100%.
And so does the other cultures which didn't have the Bible, and so does the Sumerian text. They talk about the same things. Creation is, I have to say, is defined by the separate group, and what that means is the only difference in their deciphering of the word creation and what it meant to them. That's it. That's all I can see so far.
I know.
But
and the thing is this, but it's not as rich a story. It is not as rich a story as something else. Like as you would find in the older texts. The older texts are much, much richer. You know what I mean? It's a much richer tapestry, and it's a lot of detail.
The Book of Enoch, Mackie, talks about it a lot, but there's other books of giants, isn't there?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so the Book of Giants is actually an apocryphal Jewish book which expands a narrative in the Hebrew. Its discovery at Qumran dates the text's creation to before the 2nd century before Christ. Okay, the text was written down in the second. The story is probably older. The Book of Giants is an antediluvian, which means pre-flood narrative that was received primarily in Manichaean literature. We've spoken about the Manichaeans, right? And known at Turpan. However, the earliest known traditions for the book originate in Aramaic copies of a Book of Giants in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Furthermore, references are found in Genesis 6:1-4, 1 Enoch, and visions in Daniel 7:9-14. This book tells of the background and fate of these Nephilim in the flood. So we're getting the details that have been alluded to in the Bible and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Book of Giants, its origins in the ancient Jewish tradition. The Book of Giants has long been known as a work which circulated among the Manichaeans as a composition attributed to Mani, the founder of the Manichaeans. During the 20th century, a number of finds shed considerable light on the literary evidence of the Book of Giants. The discoveries and publications of Manichaean fragments from the Book of Giants discovered at Turfan have substantiated the many references to its circulation among and used by the Manichaeans. Further identification of the Manichaean Book of Giants was revealed in 1971 when J.T. Milik discovered several Aramaic fragments of Enochic works among the Dead Sea Scrolls. These fragmentary scrolls were the primary source utilized by Mani, and the founder of Manichaeanism, in the compilation of his book, and confirmed the Book of Giants as an independent composition from the Second Temple period. Among the fragments discovered at Qumran, 10 manuscripts of the Book of Giants are identified by Stuckenbrook. These fragments were found in caves 1, 2, 4, and 6 at the site. We've got the details of the fragments here, and there are links you can click through as well. These discoveries led to further classification of the Enochic works. In the third group of classification, the 10 Aramaic manuscripts contain parts of the Book of Giants which were only known through the Manichaean sources until the recognition of it at Qumran. So let's be clear. The only tradition that was transmitted to us through time came via the Manichaeans. Everybody else had either forgotten about it or burned it or whatever, right? And we only have an independent confirmation of this once we discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls, once we found the text at Qumran in recent times. Okay, so for 2,000-3,000 years, the Manichaeans talked about it, but by themselves, and only in recent times in the 20th century did the find of these long-lost scrolls give and the second evidential source to the Book of Giants. There has been much speculation regarding the original language of the Book of Giants. It was generally believed to have had a Semitic origin. Indeed, the discovery of this text in Qumran has led scholars to believe that the book was initially composed in Aramaic. Dave?
Content of the Book of the Giants in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Book of Giants comprises a group of Aramaic fragments. Because of the fragmentation of the Book of Giants, it is difficult to know the order of the content. This work is related to the 1 Enoch analogue, which tells the story of the giants that is far more elaborate. Further, the Qumran Book of Giants bore resemblance to the Manichaean Book of Giants that followed after it. The Book of Giants is an expansive narrative of the biblical story of the birth of giants in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. In this story, the giants came into being when the sons of God had sexual relations with mortal women who birthed a hybrid race of giants. These giants partook in destructive and immoral actions which devastated humanity. When Enoch heard of this, he was distressed and asked God to bring judgment to the giants. In his mercy, God chose to give the giants a chance to repent by transmitting dreams to two giants named Oya and Haya, who relayed the dreams to an assembly of giants. These giants were perplexed with dreams, so they sent a giant named Mah-away to Enoch's abode. Enoch interceded on their behalf and gave tablets to the giants with the meaning of dreams and God's future judgment. When the giants heard of this, many chose to act in defiance of God. While the Qumran fragments were incomplete at this point, the Manichaean fragments tell of the hosts of God subduing the race of giants through battle. Most of the content of the Book of Giants is derived out of 1 Enoch 7, 3 through 6. The passage sheds light on the characterizing features of the giants. It reveals that the giants were born of the sons of God and daughters of man. The giants began to devour the works of men and went on to kill and consume them. They also sinned against birds and beasts of the sky, creeping things and the fish of the sea. It also mentions that the giants devoured the flesh of one another and they drank the blood. This act of drinking blood would have horrified the people. There is further evidence of this in Leviticus 17, 10 through 16. In this passage, there are strict rules regarding the blood of the animal. In verse 10 and 11, it says, I will set my face against any Israelite or any foreigner residing among them who eats blood, and I will cut them off from the people, for the life of the creature is in the blood. The text relates to how some giants named Oya, Haya, and Maweh, sons of the fallen angels, have some dreams that foresee the biblical flood. A brief mention of one of these, Oya, is found in the Babylonian Talmud, Nidar, chapter 9, where it is said, then I can't read that, but it says that Sid-On and Og from the Book of Numbers were brothers, and they were the sons of Ohai and the son of Zamhazai, one of the leaders of the fallen angels in the Book of Enoch. The version found at Qumran also describes the Sumerian hero Gilgamesh and the monster Humbaba. Meki. Earth to Meki. Anyone?
I have been on mute. My apologies. I have been. You know what's interesting, Dave? It's fascinating when you read it, because you cast your mind back to the flood mythology we did, right? And the reason that the flood was called down in quite a few of the instances, the mythology tells us, and this is from different parts of the world, that cannibalism was a problem. That drinking of blood was a problem. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
That misbehavior was the theme.
You got it in one. And we also and think of something else now entirely. Think of the battle of the Titans and the Gigantomachy in the Greek mythology, and the battle of Odin, with his father. So the battle of the gods.
Yeah.
Look, there's always a battle between the gods and the elder races, or sometimes even the younger races. It's really, look.
But Meki, this one tied in the Sumerians again.
It does. I'm going to go on with the text in a second. It is very clear to me, looking at the again, just the textual evidence, the mythological, I guess you want to call it, not necessarily, maybe if it's not a myth. Evidence that something happened in the past, and we all remember it. Okay, we remember. We see the physical evidence in the world. We still see it. We just blind to it. We see these massive, monolithic constructions, right? With stones that are 1,000 tons each. We see it, and we see the pyramids, we see the platform of the pyramids, we see the stone walls in South America, we see Pumapunku, we see it all. We see these gigantic cyclopean walls. We see it, but we don't see it. We ask, Meki, if there was a civilization in the distant past, where's the evidence? Where's the iPhone?
It's all around us.
In the pyramids. Where it's all around us. And like we've said before, technology will be different, or would have been different. It wouldn't be the same. There'd be something else. Some things might be similar, and other things we still can't explain. We know they're there. You can't argue against them. The mechanism of Antikythera is there. It's there. 2,000 years before advanced watchmaking. 2,000 years before we built the first mechanical watches, there is a mechanical computer that calculates the stars, the course of the stars, the moon, the sun, and it was used by navigators, to navigate the oceans, I guess. But the point is, these stories all tell us the same thing, or very similar things, and the older they are, the further back they go, the more detail is in them. Like you would expect it. You would expect that. The further away you get from an event, the more confused or less detailed it becomes, simply because of the passage of time. It's a natural thing. It happens, right? Especially if you write it down. If it's an oral tradition, believe it or not, chances are that it's going to be a lot more accurate than anything written down. Because if you write something down, it'll be translated, or it'll be written down and copied, and the copy might not be as accurate. And at the translation, there'll be something lost in a word, in 2 words, in 5 words, in 10 words. You lose meaning in it.
But
right?
Meki,
and then,
what's the best way of keeping that intact? You have a meter, and then you have a checksum.
Yes.
And the checksum per line,
exactly.
The checksum per line was the rhyme. And you couldn't rewrite it without the rhyme working, and that kept things intact.
Bingo. That's exactly right, Dave. The oral traditions are a lot more accurate that way, because they just were. It's easier. Like I said this before, and I'll say it again. I sing to my children the same songs my mother sang to me when I was a child. It's like I'm talking about lullabies. Okay, I suspect they will sing those lullabies to their children, even though it's in a language they don't fully understand, in German, right? So there might be some, shifts here. But, maybe one day they learn German properly and they can sing, properly. But my point here is, I have no idea how old these lullabies are. Because if they come down from my mother to me, and they're rhyming as well, and there's a melody attached to it. If you have a word out of place, right, the melody no longer works. It simply doesn't work anymore. So there's a lot to be said for oral tradition. Sorry, but let's get back to the text. And there are some issues, of course, and these are related to the interpretation between the Qumran and Turfan texts. Although we can glean much information out of the fragments of the narrative, there are still many unknowns and issues that scholars heavily debate. Firstly, the authorship of the Book of Giants is still questionable. As mentioned earlier, there was very little usage of this manuscript, which leaves scholars with many queries. The Qumran discoveries ruled out the Manichaeans as being the composers of the Book of Giants. However, the usage of 1 Enoch assumes that the basis of the text will also fall under an unknown author, or the idea that it was a pseudograph text. This leads scholars to question the originality and legitimacy of the book. Now, what's a pseudograph? These are falsely attributed works, texts, and so forth, whose claimed author is not the true author. That's a pseudograph. Or a work whose real author attributed to a figure of the past. Pseudography covers the false ascription of names of authors to works, even to authentic works that make no such claim within their text. Thus, a widely accepted but incorrect attribution of authorship may make a completely authentic text pseudographical. Assessing the actual writer of the text locates questions of pseudographical attribution within the discipline of literary criticism. In biblical studies, the term pseudographer refers typically to an assorted collection of Jewish religious works thought to have been written between 300 BC and 300 AD. They are distinguished by Protestants from the Deuterocanonical books, Catholic and Orthodox, or Apocrypha, Protestant. The books that appear in extant copies of the Septuagint from the 4th century on, and the Vulgate, but not in the Hebrew Bible or in Protestant Bibles. So that is what pseudograph is, right? So falsely authors to an authentic text. The text is real, we just don't know who wrote it, and we say someone else wrote it. The books of Daniel and 1 Enoch both have similarities to Oya and Hayas, which are 2 giants, visions. Both have writings of the King of Heaven sitting on his throne, and the Aramaic text A12 has similar writings. However, the text differs from these two as God comes down from heaven, but the basic premise remains the same. There are different versions of the Book of Giants, which can cause issues. Furthermore, though both versions are said to derive from the same script, both are very different in their content. The Manichaean version has many differences from the Aramaic version and does not have the same visions in it. According to J.T. Milik, the Book of Giants is believed to have been part of the Pentateuch of Enoch, along with the Book of Watches, the Book of Dreams, the Epistle of Enoch, and the Astronomical Book. All of these would have been significant from the beginning of the 1st century. However, during the Christian era, this collection was altered, and this narrative was replaced by the Book of Parables. The sparse copies of these books could have been due to a lack of overall use after it was replaced by the Book of Parables. Again, time wasn't kind to many texts, especially if the texts either didn't agree with the official storyline, or were too complicated, or just weren't very interesting. I mean, it's a much simpler story to say, oh, there were giants in those days, and they committed sins. They were, taking the daughters of men for their wives, their children, and they were punished by God because of their sins. That's the story. Thank you very much. We don't need the detail. There was a battle that ensued. It wasn't just that God came down and punished them. They fought. They fought like titans and gods before, like giants and gods before, in other legends. Okay, this wasn't just God meting out punishment. Right? This was God, whoever he may be, fighting with the giants and subduing them, and then sending them. Or maybe the flood was part of the warfare. Who knows? Maybe they redirected an asteroid to crash into the Indian Ocean, Dave, to end the Ice Age, which brought about the cataclysm and catastrophic flooding, right? Because if you think about it, if that happened, and we're pretty sure that it did, all of the descriptions of all the flood myths make perfect sense. The waters from the deep, the rain of fire and water, right? The darkness, 40 days of rain, the floods, the massive tsunamis, the tidal waves. It all makes sense. The massive glacial lakes that would have broken the icy dams
and
endless flooded rain. Endless rain. It all makes perfect sense. If there were an asteroid or something similar that crashed into the ocean and causing the ice age to come to an end, catastrophically, we might add, it makes perfect sense. Okay, and that is the event we are remembering. That's not the event that they want us to remember, but it's the event that we have remembered. Every single culture on the planet has remembered something like it, right? Dave, the next bit is a bit off center, but I thought it's interesting because I came across it. It's related material. If you want to take it, it's very interesting.
Yeah, completely. Now, we've talked about the yugas before in past shows, and these are let's talk about the first 6 of them. So the first yuga, the Aeon or era, was called Nitiva Yuga. During this time, divine, human, and all other virtues flourished without hindrance. They did not fear demons, and there was perfect harmony among the creatures of the universe, or as well as among those who lived in the 14 worlds.
Now, this is 14 worlds. Keep going.
In this yuga, the first yuga, the king was righteous and did not oppress his people through taxes or other means. During this peaceful time, Crony was born. Croni or Crony, who is analogous to Satan and the Christian tradition, is a primordial personification of evil. Though Crony is said to have been born with multitudinous limbs, you can take that in a minute, each the size of a mountain, he nevertheless assumes different forms of different yugas, as Rihanna or the Duryodhana, for example. Likewise, Maon also incarnates in different yugas as different avatars, for example, Rama or Krishna. The 14 worlds, is that lokas?
Yes. Yep.
Described in the ancient Indian Puranas are the following: 1. Satvaloka, 2. Tapoloka, 3. Janaloka, 4. Mararloka, 5. Suvarloka, 6. Burvarloka, Burloka, Atala, Vitala, Nitala, and Rasatala, Mahatlaala, and Sutalana, and number 14, Patala. The Puranas usually describe these worlds as different regions of the observable universe, the planet Earth, Earth's immediate neighborhood, and regions far beyond. The Bhagavata Purana has many passages that describe these worlds as inhabited planets with movement of people between them through some kind of interplanetary travel.
That's the reason I put it in here. Clearly, there's this mention of a giant here, right? Which is Crony. But think about this for a second, right? Two things that really struck me. One, the 14 worlds, the loka. So our word location comes from locus, which is a point of presence. Now, locus clearly is very closely related to the word locus. So locus clearly is an ancient Sanskrit word, which the Romans must have taken over from the Sanskrit, right? And it was obviously a word that was so ingrained in people's vocabulary that it was just simply done. I'll give you an example of that in modern times. The poor, Singapore, Badapur. Poor means city. Singapore means city, right? So you find a lot of cities which have the ending pur or pura in it. Okay? Polis, right? Which also means city or...
That's the Greek word for... Or the Latin.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Greek. That is exactly right. So Minneapolis, right? Or place names like that. It just means the city of Minya or Mina, right? Metropolis, same thing. The city of Metro, right? And so my point here is that so we might not know what polis or pur mean, right? Singapore or Singapura. So pur, it's just a word as far as we're concerned, but it is nonetheless a descriptive title. And Tapaloka, Janaloka, this is clearly the place Tapo or the place Jana or the world Jana or the world Maha or the world Suva. Okay, so the word loka or lokas, yeah, it was clearly survived in time into our present day, and location still means a place of something, right? A location is a place, but it's not just a place. A location is it's something very specific that is associated with a place, right? A location. So over thousands of uncounted thousands of years, the word lokas has been handed down to us. Fascinating stuff, right? And then secondly, the blah blah blah, these worlds as different regions of the observable universe, and there are many passages to describe these worlds as inhabited, the inhabited planets, and movement of people between them through some kind of interplanetary travel. I find this immensely fascinating. So there's no question at all as to whether or not we are interplanetary travelers. It's a statement. It's not, oh, are we, will we, is it true, is it not true? It's just a statement. Yeah, it's just a statement of fact. Here we are. That's what it is. We are traveling. These are the planets we travel to. We live on these 14 planets. We can do about it. It's no, but you know what I mean? And funny, the word crony. Now, is crony at all similar to the word Kronos to you? So Kronos was the father of, exactly. But he was also the father of Zeus or Jupiter, depending on if you're Roman or Greek. So, and Zeus fought Kronos and defeated him. Okay, so is this a memory of that as well? I mean, this is fascinating stuff. And again, unless you do the research...
What about cronies? Cronies are people who are the heavies.
Yeah.
They're the heavies of a bad person, right? Them and their cronies.
Yeah. Again, there's linguistic fragments that survive to this day, and you will find words you will not be able to find the root of, unless you really do the research. And you're right, Dave. Cronies could very well be another fragmentary or linguistic fragment of that time, because again, we have these words, and in German and Indian or Hindi, Sanskrit really share the same word for pineapple. Still, German and Sanskrit have the same word for pineapple, which is ananas, right? So you look it up if you want to. And how did that happen? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Nobody else calls it ananas, only those two guys. but there it is, because these words and this to me indicates a connection at some dim and distant past where pineapples were traded between these two peoples. I'm sure. Okay, or they came from a place where one called it this, ananas, and then sold it to the other or brought it to the other, and they then called it ananas because that's what these guys called it. So clearly that's what it is, if you get my drift. I can't get over how, in my head, think of my head as a gigantic cobweb. Okay, there's so many connections between everything, and there's so many little lights that go on and little switches that are being thrown, and that they're establishing connections between this, that, and the other. To me, there's this that is slowly emerging out of the fog, Dave. That's the best way I can describe it. Of the dim and distant past. A very clear clear picture. The longer we've done this now for 8 years, you and I, right? And we've always had interest in this, but this certainly gives me an excuse during the week to do more research than I otherwise would have time to do the radio show. I mean, no, it's true, right? I mean,
I completely agree.
Yeah. Right. And so we do the research, and it's something I might not be able to do otherwise because I have this audience listening, hopefully enjoying what we're saying. And you go into it, and you can. And for the past 8 years, we have compiled hundreds and hundreds of pages of show notes, and we have made comparisons, and we have been able to go back and think about things and make the connections. And I tell you, right, unequivocally, what we are taught in school as the official story, and what we're told rather by the official media or government or whatever it might be, is completely wrong. Now, I'm not doubting the existence or the reality of reality. Not at all. I mean,
no.
You can, but I understand what's going on. But our history, where we come from, what went before us, completely wrong, or misinterpreted, either deliberately or by omission, or, well, by incompetence, whatever it may be, right? And it's astounding to me, because you look at these primary texts, and you look at the linguistic, you have to look at the language, you always have to you look at these linguistic similarities, you look at the similarities of the stories. And in fact, I'm not the first one to say, Jung had it as well. Jung talk about archetypes. There's another one here called Hamlet's Mill. If you haven't read Hamlet's Mill, I do urge you to read it. It's a comparative work on mythology, and they all identify archetypes. Oh, sorry. Don't go anywhere until, because Gerber is coming up here with an awesome roundtable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to say hello to everyone that was chatting to me on the chat room as well. Thank you, everyone, and welcome, Lady Horse. Thank you, Nighthawk. And stay tuned for Jer-Bear's Roundtable. Be a part of it. Be a part of radio. And you could end up with your own show. See you next week, everyone.